had, you had most of your newcomers for bowl practice, but I know bowl practice is a little different when you're preparing for a home. This is more about individuals and gym. What is your early evaluation of those newcomers when it's been about themselves the last 2 days?
Yeah, just their retention. You know, a lot of times when freshmen come in, one of the hardest things for those guys to make in terms of adjustments is just the mental capacity and what it takes. You know, obviously, our playbook is a lot more advanced than some of the high schools that they came from. So those guys' ability to grasp what we're trying to get accomplished, from an X's and O perspective, and then just their, sheer tenacity. A lot of those guys, come from high-level programs, and you can tell just the way they carry themselves and how hard they're working to this point. So we're extremely pleased with them. We think most of those guys have a chance to be special as they continue to grow within the program.
Some freshmen can be ready to play early on, others are sort of projections down the road. How do you distinguish between the two when you look at a guy, evaluate whether he's a guy that can play early or that's going to need a little while?
Well, again, like I tell all the guys during the recruiting process, we don't decide who start, they do. So it's just really based on their body of work and the consistency in which they do it, because you can have some good days, and obviously there are going to be some bad days, but just how many days can they string together that are obviously positive? Are they continuing to get better? Are they continuing to work? Those are the characteristics that will decide, how much playing time a guy gets. And that's not necessarily just for the freshmen, but that's for the sophomores or juniors or, even some of the guys who, had a big role last year and is hoping to get a bigger role. So, everything is based on consistency, and like we always say, which I've said since I got here, you get what you earn. If those guys are doing the right things, and doing it at a consistent manner, then those guys got an opportunity to contribute.
Austin and Jim.
Get the two kids from BYU. What have you seen thus far out of Gabe and Keenan, and what do you like about their mental makeup and what they bring to the team?
Yeah, but both those guys have been awesome. They're obviously both experienced guys. Gabe, from the back end perspective, he's very calm. He has a great demeanor about him. Extremely smart. So far, he's been everything that we want him to be. As far as KP goes, I actually love this kid. He's just a guy that's, great to be around, just the way he carries himself, just as a young man. But then obviously when you get him on the field, you understand why he's played so many games. So we're excited about both guys. We think they both have, an opportunity to contribute to our program. And obviously if they continue to grow, their roles will be determined.
Coach, with the freshmen, do you try to kind of spoon feed them, or do you throw everything at them and see what they can absorb?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the way we're built right now, going into year 3, those guys don't really have the luxury of just, being spoon fed. They're learning at the same pace that the veterans are learning. So yeah, in some ways that can be tough on freshmen, but I think in the long term, it's going to speed it up and give those guys an opportunity to be able to contribute this year. So no, we're not slowing down at all. We're throwing a lot at them, and the more they can retain, the more we'll continue to throw at them. But it's only been obviously 2 days, but so far they seem to have a pretty good grasp on what we're trying to get accomplished.
You got an influx of new guys, obviously, in the secondary. How much do you cross-train with those guys? We saw Christian Charles looks like he's working at safety. How much do you move around those guys in spring, or is it one of those, to kind of piggyback what Jimmy said, you want them to learn one spot before you start moving them in the cross-training world?
Yeah, it's not really a one-size-fit-all, answer. I think it's a lot based on the kid and, what he's done. You use Christian Charles as an example. When we first got here, Christian actually played safety for us. So, him having an ability to play boundary safety, field safety, obviously with the experience that he gathered, last year playing corner, we feel like we can move him around to a lot of different spots to give him a great opportunity, to continue to carve out a role for himself. As it relates to the freshmen, we try to be a little bit more deliberate with our approach with those guys, giving them an opportunity to learn one of the positions, and once they show that they can obviously master that spot, then we start to move those guys around a little bit. So the playbook is going to be thick enough, that we really want them to focus on one specific position, and then obviously once they gather that, we'll obviously move them around, accordingly.
Austin, Adam, and Casey.
We were out there obviously for the first few periods today. Arion had an interception out there. What do you like about his mental makeup and athleticism, that combination? And do you feel like he's someone who this spring could really elevate him into being a guy that can hit fall camp, run?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously anytime you get a chance to invest, and he has 15 opportunities to do that, just like all those guys. But I would tell you about him as a person, just once again, just a high character kid, has a lot of, pride in what he does. He's extremely bright, and like you said, the athleticism you can't hide. So, I was really pleased with the instincts that he showed today in coverage. I think a lot of time, for linebackers, typically when they come out of high school, they're guys that just come off the edges, or guys that are just thumpers inside. But for you guys that seen him play in high school, tremendous running back, obviously blossomed as a linebacker. So he's got really good instincts, and like I said, I was pleased with what he showed in coverage today. So he's definitely trending in the right direction.
I've heard you talk a lot about your philosophy in coaching, adapting, stopping the run first, this sort of thing. I don't know if I've ever asked you about your philosophy in recruiting. Is there one specific trait or a certain number of traits you're looking for in recruiting?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is by position, specific sometimes, but I think overall makeup, you obviously want guys that are tough, guys that are athletic, and when I say tough, it's not just physically, but mentally, how much of a competitor are they? I personally like, guys that play multiple sports, guys that love to compete. Those things are, to me, sometimes it seems to be a dying art, but anytime you can have a guy that maybe runs track, wrestles, basketball, things of that nature, they're just used to competing no matter what the arena is. So to me, that competition piece and being able to compete is a big one, but obviously size, toughness, and athleticism is, things that we cherish as well.
How are you hoping to use these spring practices to really shape the identity that you want this defense to be?
Yeah, we're investing and we're building. We try to talk daily about the choices that we make. Putting us in a position to have the outcome that we desire. So, it's a long spring. We obviously got 2 days in, but so far those guys are really working their tails off to because they understand what's at stake. Sometimes when you think about 15 opportunities, like, well, I got time to get better. We don't see it that way. We're in a fight, in a race to try to be as good as we can be, as fast as we can be it. And our kids, particularly the guys that have been here, obviously understand that mantra. So, it's just one of those days. We're trying to be 1-0 every day, and I think our kids understand that, and that's how we're working.
Patrick and Jimmy.
Coach, looking at a guy like Jordan Matthews, so that cornerback position, how tough is it to come in and learn as a freshman? What are some of the biggest challenges for those guys coming up to this level, and how has he kind of handled that going back to bowl practices or this offseason so far?
Yeah, like I said earlier, all those guys are really doing a great job, and just with their preparation and understanding what to do. But obviously you step up in class. When you come to the collegiate level, and you're not the fastest guy. Like a lot of these guys were on their respective teams, and Jordan's no different. But the thing that I love about him, he's a super competitor. Like a lot of those guys, he's got good size. He obviously can run. So he's a guy that we're not concerned about in terms of the stage being too big. It's just working on his craft daily, which he's doing. So we think he has a chance to be a special player here, along with some of the other guys.
Coach, I know the only stat that matters is winning, but do you?
Nope, ain't no but. That's it. Go ahead.
Do you look at rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, third down defense? Do you look at that and say, hey, we've got to get better in these areas?
Yeah, you always try to look at ways that you need to improve, but ultimately, like I tell guys all the time, you play. We obviously have a style in play that we want to play with, that we think gives us the best opportunity to be successful. What are we trying to take away? I think someone asked me earlier. Yeah, we want to stop the run. Now, what does that look like? Those are high percentage throws too on early downs. We count that in the run game. But to me, you want to be able to take away the explosive plays. To me, that's a critical factor in success. Obviously, anytime you can make a team one-dimensional, it puts you in a win situation as well. But the third thing, to be quite honest with you, is what you said earlier. Are you getting off the field? I think we're top 25 in the country, in stop rate. Obviously, if you're just talking statistically, people will say, well, you weren't as quite good in the passing game. Well, no, we weren't, but we were good where it needed to be, and that's getting our tails off the field. And that's the bottom line of football. Don't let them score, get off the field, give the offense a chance to be good. And like I said, we're top 25 in doing that. Our goal is obviously to be number one, but our real goal is to win. So whatever that takes is what we're going to do.
Last question, Casey.
What are some of the things that you want your freshmen to learn from the older guys on the defense, things that could really benefit them as they develop this spring?
Yeah, I think it's, that's a big question, because it's a lot of things, but it's related to football, just again, how we go about our business, being able to manage, the highs, and obviously work through the lows. I think sometimes you can get comfortable when you have some success, and I think sometimes when, things don't quite go the way you want them to go, guys tend to drop their heads. So our veterans understand, we play from, one snap lives, period. Once that snap is over, we start over again. So if they can teach them that skill, I think it'll bode well for most of the freshmen.